Hello and welcome to this video, which just gives a few brief comments in terms of how to handle the impact of COVID-19 in relation to the business plan assignment. So obviously, COVID-19 has affected all aspects of life, and for some people it's been a really tragic experience. But for all of us, there's been at least some impact. You can see in the image here, some of the most ubiquitous impacts, of course, the Zoom meetings and Zoom tutorials and classes and so forth, face masks, and the whole physical distancing that's been necessary as a result of the pandemic. So obviously there's many things that could be said about that, but I'm just going to limit in this video to the comments about the Accounting 3008 business plan. So the question is, well, obviously this is a huge issue, a huge global change. How should we take this into account in relation to performing this business plan assignment? Now, essentially, there are two options that are available to you. Option number one is that you can assume a post-COVID world. So assume that there is a vaccine, and that things, at least to some degree, kind of get back to normal in the not too distant future. So that's option A. Option B is to assume a within COVID world. So your business venture is launching in conditions pretty much as they are now. And so, the fundamental changes that have resulted from the pandemic are things that you are taking into account in terms of formulating your business idea. So I'll say a bit more about both of those options in just a moment, but the important thing to keep in mind when formulating your plan is that whichever option you choose, you need to take that into account. You need to make it explicit in your plan and adjust your assumptions accordingly. So let's have a look at these two options. So option one, assuming a post-COVID world. So the approach under this option would be to use the pre-COVID assumptions. So you could look at the financial information or industry information that you would have ordinarily, but then make some kind of adjustment for how things are likely to have changed, after COVID. And this will be different depending on the type of industry that you are in. So for example, it looks like at least in the medium term, there'll be quite a significant impact in terms of businesses like travel, luxury goods, where there's just less funds available. Many people have either lost jobs or had their jobs reduced, and so, have lower disposable income. For the travel industry, I think it'll take some time to get back to pre-COVID levels. But in the longer term, it may have limited impact, as was the case with the SARS pandemic. But in terms of your business plan, these are some areas where you would expect to have quite a significant modification to the pre-COVID data that you're using. On the other hand, if you're in industries where there's probably likely to be a low impact, so something to do with the grocery sector, home products and so forth, well then you could probably use the industry information pretty much as is, because you might say, well look, post-COVID, there's not much that's going to be changed in relation to these particular aspects of society, and therefore the pre-COVID assumptions or the pre-COVID information is perfectly valid to underpin your business plan. So that's option one, the post-COVID world. Option two is you could say, well, my business plan is going to specifically adapt to COVID conditions, and therefore, is going to look at some of the impacts of COVID as a business opportunity. So, and I think a good example of that is this article here from startupdaily.net, which looks at some Victorian startups which are thriving during the crisis. So under this approach, you would pretty much have to ignore pre-COVID assumptions and find some original data sources, or at least make some educated guesses, based on perhaps some much more recent information that you can find. Of course, this is a bit more challenging, but on the other hand, the markers are a bit more lenient in terms of the quality of information that you've assembled. So, making some broader assumptions is more reasonable if you choose this option. So what are some of the examples that are cited in this particular article? Well, there's Volley, which is an online marketplace for volunteering. And, as people have been made retrenched, many of them have decided to do some volunteering, and others who have just felt called because of the pandemic. So Volley has had a tremendous increase in terms of applicants and volume through its business. ClearCalcs, which is an online drawing platform for engineers and architects. This enables collaboration between these different groups online, and of course, online collaboration is a big issue now. And also, the construction industry, at least so far, hasn't been hugely affected by COVID. So, therefore, there's still some strong demand for this kind of application. A third example, MediStays, accommodation website for medical travellers, and of course, the medical industry has been at the forefront of the COVID response. And finally, Aeromedical Solutions, which is a broker for patient repatriation. And of course, there have been, sadly, many people stranded as a result of having to have medical care, both COVID related and otherwise, but then finding it difficult to actually get home after that care. So that's another business that has had a tremendous increase in activity in the COVID era. So those are your two options. So in either case, the requirement is to make your assumptions explicit. So how does that work? Well, in two basic places. The first one, to state your overall assumption when discussing the business opportunity, i.e., are you assuming a post or within COVID world? And then secondly, to make the adjustments or cite appropriate sources as required when you're completing the financial section of the business plan. So I hope that provides a little bit of guidance for how to handle the issue of the pandemic when completing your 3008 business plan. I hope that's helpful, and of course, keep safe. Thank you.